Hi everyone, and welcome to CoinBundle Conversations, where we invite some of the leading investors and entrepreneurs in the blockchain space so that you can learn from their investment strategies and become a better investor yourself. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Zhen, who's an investment director at JLABs at JD Capital. And she's going to tell us about her experience as an investor, both in the venture space as well as in the blockchain space. So Zhen, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for inviting. I've been hearing and following guys for a while, have been done great in organic growth. And yeah, so I'll tell more about what is JLAB. So JD Capital is our mother company, which is one of the largest PE fund in China, and we're the only publicly traded private equity group in China as well. And we have the whole financial group. So under our financial group, we have security exchange, we have banking system, we have insurance company as well, and we have 100 plus publicly traded portfolios. So that is our value add to basically to the blockchain projects. So some of them, if they're working on infrastructure building, which is like public chain or consortium chain, so we can provide our help from our portfolio, which has 100 plus million users or like multi-billion valuation. Those ones already have the traction. So we bring them into the real world implementation into blockchain. And then we invested, so for the crypto side, we call the crypto fund called JLAB, and we invested over 40 companies. So some of them are in exchanges, so it's basically full spectrum. Exchanges, wallet, media, and public chains, and applications, and also we have a lot of connections in the traditional internet finance company in China. So some of them are in blockchain, some of them are peer-to-peer lending or credit. So we are leveraging that side of the insights and traction into. So some of them are doing token sale, or some of them are just. Or they are like internet company. They probably was working on streaming, was working on something else. So we bring them into ICO and working like using token to generate the network.
Right.
And and we invested on the in the America side. We invested a bunch of like academic projects because there's a lot of noise going on. We really want to support the people who's been working from like 2012 and 4 years ago, or have a vision. And so some of them are professor from Cornell, professor from Berkeley, and some professor from MIT. So some of them are working on privacy preserved contracts, like one of our portfolio called Oasis. So they're working with Uber and many other companies who's on the GDPR compliance, on the processing the data in a private way. And some of them are working on higher transaction throughput, for example, like Thunder token. So one of the co-founder, Yilan Shi, she's actually the first people who wrote the academic Bitcoin white paper. And her co-founder, Chris Wan, who sold his company around 300 million into Disney. So there's an entrepreneurial and academic play combining there. So they got a lot of traction. They're hiring extreme talented talents, and they started to let the market get to know them well. So they're working on the having a fast path for making the transaction once the blockchain, the tradition. The consensus algorithm got congested, they're gonna come back to the traditional arsenic way, and then in that way, when the congestion got stopped, and then they're gonna sweep back. So there is a fast path way of higher the transaction volume.
That's really interesting projects. So I think it would be great to hear about your journey as an investor. So you started out as a researcher. How did you break into venture investing for the first time?
Yeah, so while I was doing research, it's actually pretty much already fully committed to VR, virtual reality. So my fundamental thesis is really clear about efficiency.
Yeah.
So for efficiency, I feel like for virtual reality, you're providing efficiency. When you analyze the data in VR, you can actually have maybe more dimension that you can see than the normal flat screen. And or same with medical, same with education, you can always get your efficiency level up. And then the same thesis. So how I get into VR, how I get into venture, because I was very into VR, and then I wasn't prepared to join a startup because I want to be more solid, more insightful when I do a company. So I choose to be on the helper and the basically on the venture side can grow with a company. And then that's how I get into a VC. And then I joined HTC Vive on the content partnership side, and to work with the major IP who's getting into VR, which is already have the traction. Let's say we work with Star Wars, Star Trek, HBO on those titles with existing track record. And then actually my previous VC fund partner, he invested in blockchain from 2011, and he's a serial entrepreneur in blockchain as well. So he started to talk to me about, and then I get back to him that shall we also invest in some token projects, and then to see what's the mechanism going on there. And then after a while, I got inquiry from JD Capital, so they're looking for a person who's more engaged on both sides, both China capital, China market, and also American or Western tech. So they found me, and they have the whole portfolio, and they have the whole primary market and secondary market team set up. So really respect what they've done, and it's like a better vertical for me to work with projects. So
that's great. So initially you were doing traditional venture investments. You must get so many projects pitching to you. How would you decide which company to invest in and which company to not? And this is not before blockchain, when you were doing VR investing.
Yeah, sure. So of course, for team is always the first thing you can look at, and there's several headlines. I think everyone gonna talk about it. Timing probably sometimes is more important than team, because right now, come back to the blockchain. So a lot of time, if you have the network effect, and you can have a lot of competitive advantage. Let's say, so something like, in the extreme way to say EOS, they have it's like a timing. They have strong enough capital, but of course reputation matters. So there's a bunch of chemistry going on. So timing, the first, and then team, and then also you need to, of course, there's gonna have a lot of people very crazy about their idea, but they didn't really think through the product market fit. So product market fit is definitely down the road. You need to have a projection of what is going on in the market, and how do you, as an investor, you need to think more than the current market, and you need to be analytical of the trend. And so that's basically those bullet points that we're looking at.
That's great. And so then when you transition from traditional venture to blockchain, did the things you look at, do they stay the same, or are there other things on top of this that also become part of the evaluation? So when you choose a blockchain company to invest in, do you look at the same things, the team, the product market fit, or are there other factors involved as well?
Yeah, so there's more factor coming in as, so community is a very important thing. So let's say, I can see that some projects that I'm looking right now, basically they wasn't really work on community, and then the judgment from the supporters, for example, from VCs and from exchanges actually change once they got the traction from community. So there's different package for a different way of being successful now, not necessarily long term, but we can see some company, they're very hardcore developing the tech, and then everyone knows that they've been working on this for a long time, but of course you need to deliver. But if you are a technical focused company, you can get a lot of support. Like Cosmos has been working on the interoperability, and so Plasma has been working on the scalability. So those projects has been a while can be supported from different parties, but also other than tech, we should also look into community. So because there's a communication chemistry going on there between the team and how they're packaging themselves to the retail investors, to the institutional investors, to the or the users, right? So if their messaging is actually got adoption, that's, you can see it from the beginning, how they communicate themselves and how they approach the market. You can see that, oh, this team knows how to communicate. Let's say some company, when they raise the capital in ICO or in pre-sale, they're looking for global reach. Now, we can see some company, we know that like US and China is pretty strong, and then we can see when they reach out to investors, it's probably gonna, I want to go for Chinese investor because they're more connected to exchanges, and then they can provide me a lot of liquidation. But then some projects that I'm looking into, they care about the global reach. They want to, let's say there's no funds in Southeast Asia, or like there is, but then they will look into some influencers who's in that space, who's actively look into blockchain, and then would love to get into it, and with their existing business or traction or their strength. So it's how they communicate with the whole consumer is important.
And how do you evaluate that? Do you look at their Telegram channel, the Reddit? Do you look at do you sign up for their product, or do you ask other investors? How do you assess their communication?
So of course we can see how they communicate directly from Telegram or any of the developer channel. Like let's say on the Telegram chat, if they can provide like. So there's several ways. Like some company was doing like proof of care, and you basically like you need to care about my projects in order to get allocation. So that's a way of communication, but then it's not necessarily right. And also we can see some projects, for example, like Holochain. So what they were doing is they were doing a crowd sale of the host, which is a physical hardware, and you need to. So they're doing like distributing computing, and you need to be as the host and have a hardware which is gonna be eventually be part of my network and have more access to the token sale. So that's like more, you can see that they want to build the things, and they're already been prepared, and they already have the hardware set up. And so, but those are all pretty much format innovation, and we can see that there's a lot of format innovation. There's some company looking for like internet influencer, YouTubers, Twitter influencers, and or like Medium writers, or the ones who's really active in Bitcoin Talk or Reddit and has like those negotiation power. But of course, you have an ability to reach out to developer is actually very valuable, because in the end of the day, if you're building a platform, it all matters. Because previously when I was in VR AR industry, right, it's a platform as well. You need to get the consumer. It's like a chicken and egg issue. When you get them, you first want to build your developer ecosystem and then provide variety enough of them projects in order to attract more audience. And then a lot of times some platform, they are actually the one to providing the capital. They are the one to provide their communication mechanism between them and developer. And let's say I can see what was HTC, for example, what they were working on. They have like the ecosystem fund accelerator. They have the corporate strategy fund. They have the content team that can support them, the fund. So there's different verticals, and they also have like VR for good. So you can see that the people who's working as a platform builder, giving try, and they have like people full-time working, talking to the people on Reddit, and and also, so that's like what kind of people you're getting in the team matters. Let's say what kind of community manager they're getting in. It's all about the communication. So Google spend a lot of time in the hiring process, right? It's all about whether this culture is, so as a founder, whether I'm having a good chemistry between the people I'm hiring. And then there's essentially, it's all about communication. Communication is the only thing that wouldn't be copied to the other like, even though you're open source or you are company who's like very easy to copy, let's say like Uber or Airbnb, why they couldn't get copied? Because their hiring process, their communication process, their internal like roadmap, so stuff like that. So
that's awesome. And so you evaluate the communication, you evaluate the project. At what stage of a blockchain company do you normally invest in? Do you do equity? Do you do token pre-sale? Or do you also invest once the token has been listed? Do you have like a particular stage that you focus on?
So I pretty much focus on early stage. As always, while I was in VC, I invested around 15 equity deals. So those are VR, AR, AI, computer vision, and those are pretty much seed round and Series A. And right now in blockchain, I've only invested in token sales. And pre-sale, basically you talk to the founders, you help them navigate or provide insights of like token design, or how do you want to communicate with the other investors, or how to put the whole thing together. So it's pretty much same with the early stage investment. It's very much a primary, but for us, we also have a secondary market team. So we want to be responsible of the projects, which is so our insights, we have a lot of insights come from traditional PE. So we've done a lot of IPO deals, and we also was helping them on like a lot of secondary market things. And so we're providing insights from the secondary market as well. And so there is definitely a lot of, let's say, unregulated play over like globally on the secondary market. So yeah, I do. Like previously, so we were talking about, I do want to see more, so the early stage is providing them more, more suggestions.
That's great. And obviously like being a part of or connected to this large company which has been really successful in traditional finance, you can bring a lot of insights and connections to these early stage companies as well.
And also we can see there's a lot of token fund coming up. So every token fund have different verticals. So I feel like a lot of retail investors' judgment is guided by influencers and token fund. And some of the token fund, you can actually value the token funds by their portfolios, right? Some of them are listed, and then you can like as a retail investor, you can do your own research, like what kind of chemistry you want in your portfolio. So there's separation between a short-term play and long-term play. You can see that there is some company who's betting on the projects, some funds betting on the project who's like don't care about liquidation right now, because when the projects haven't been built yet, when there's no product yet, you probably don't want to do too much noise in the market, because you basically are doing like irresponsible like marketing to retail investors. I think the better way is for institutional investors, you can definitely support from before the product coming out. And for retail investors, because you're not like spending a lot of time we're probably like not full time on the project's due diligence, and then you don't have time to spend time with the team. And then essentially there's a lot of judgment from the team as well. When you talk to a company, you can tell what they were working on and why they want to in this space, and what's their 5-year goal, what's their 10-year goal. You can have a fundamental analysis of whether this is gonna be pump and dump thing, or this will actually an investment that won't harm the retail investors. So Yeah, so as a retail investor, you can judge on your own by the portfolio of them, and you can also see how much they care about liquidation, how much they care about price versus value, right?
Right.
So,
right. So you must see a lot of projects in the market that are just trying to make quick money from retail investors, and it's important for retail investors to also be careful of putting money into those.
Yeah, there's definitely it's actually very easy to tell, but of course the intention for retail investors is probably partially trading, or partially value investing, or partially I just want to be influenced, I want to be part of the revolution. So there's different verticals. So as a retail investor, you can justify your own intention on your portfolio. So it's all about what makes you more fulfillment at the end of the day, right? So,
absolutely. And so from your personal investment portfolio, have you started seeing certain themes where you think blockchain is going to be more successful in others, such as fintech or any particular areas which you focused on, or are you equally looking at all different applications?
Yeah, so for me right now, like for within 1 or 2 or 3 years, I'm heavily looking into currency, into like financial instruments, basically like on the trading side, or currency is more on the, let's say, privacy coins, or on the basically for like day-to-day transaction, or the currency which is like more related to the industry, like gaming currency, like the currency who's like very like utilities who come from either O2O service or like more on the currency side of thing, because a lot of time for them like we know that for the pricing side on the regard to the application, if your token, if there's only one system of your token and the fluctuation is actually pretty bad user interface and user experience, and then there's a dilemma of, if it is a utility token, why don't I buy it 1 second before I want to use you, right? So there's some awkward implementation between blockchain and between traditional company and the current the token model. There's some awkward combination over there. And also if it is an O2O or like share economy company, so the customer service actually matters the most as a service company, right? So if you are like fully autonomous team, like where's your customer service gonna come from? So there's like maybe opportunities of having a customer service company for those autonomous like organization. That could be a possibility, but you still need to understand the customer, you need expertise. So who gonna solve that problem, right? So
no, that's really interesting. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about China, because we've had a lot of companies come and talk about this, and a lot of them are raising capital from Chinese investors. Why do you think there's so much interest from that market in the blockchain space, and where do you see that trending towards?
Yeah, so fundamentally, it's very easy to tell because China is a very fast pace on making adoption. So coming back to VR, you can see that VR Arcade is the easiest way to do the real world implementation, and then it's a cash flow business if you set up the thing, and then you can do it. And then same with as we can see Alipay, WeChat Pay. So those mobile payments actually take off massively, like in a very short amount of time, because the consumer, because of fast pace, and everyone is not struggling, but like fighting for real estate, fighting for next job, and then the whole hiring process is basically for the startups in China. If you don't make if you don't meet a certain amount of KPI, you're probably gonna get fired. And then the fast pace make people willing to make change very fast. And then in that way, every new platform coming into the market, people will will want to leverage them to accelerate their pace.
Yeah.
So previously like internet and mobile, and right now blockchain. So so a lot of Chinese people, they have the pressure to innovate, and they have the pressure to getting like just live a regular life, still need a pressure, like look at the housing situation.
Yeah.
So, and then for the of course from the crypto investment standpoint,
Yeah.
you can see all the exchanges is actually on the top tier of the whole food chain.
Yeah.
And then exchanges that all started from Chinese people, and let's say like Binance, Huobi, OKEX, and those ones are pretty much their investors are Chinese people. And then right now we can see a trend that a lot of token fund or a lot of traditional equity investors started to invest in crypto, and saying that I am Binance like equity holder.
Yeah.
I am early supporter for OK. So that's their story, because they are the early supporter for the food chain, and they got the trust on top of the food chain. So they got the trust from those exchanges. So basically, those exchanges can provide them more access to liquidation.
Yeah.
And then when they recommend the projects to exchanges, there's trust originally, because they trust, exchange will trust them fund's due diligence process, because it's a lot of interesting mechanism going. And you can also on the other side, you can also see that there's some successful token projects got a lot of traction, and they're investing back to the token fund,
Yeah.
investing in them. So there's an value network accumulated, and that's why the food chain, the top of the food chain, is in China. So that's why there's a lot of traction, and also the way that Chinese people doing like online marketing and like a virus or like organic growth, they have a lot of tactics on that, on the marketing mechanism, and WeChat is a great place for stick everyone into the day-to-day communication. And there's a lot of WeChat group going on about investing, about studying about blockchain, and it's actually accelerating like $1 billion of business getting signed on WeChat, and every token fund work globally, communicate through WeChat. So there's definitely some basically there's several.
No, that's really interesting, because I think like maybe in traditional investing, people would say, hey, come to San Francisco, Silicon Valley to build a company, because that's where the investors are, that's where the startups are. But in the blockchain space, it seems like both the investors as well as the early successes are in this like amazing ecosystem coming out of China. So maybe more and more companies will flock there to build projects out of China too.
Yeah. Blockchain itself shouldn't be restrained in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
Because it's basically, you can see that there's a lot of pretty good projects has a global team, and they just work as a decentralized way. And then in the end of the day, the ideology is you won't find you won't have a leader of these projects. Otherwise, what if any of the regulation happening?
Yeah.
What if any of the competitor coming in, and then they're gonna take away the leadership, and then the company itself wouldn't run out of the leadership. So that's where blockchain come into play. So those very powerful organizations are actually leaderless. You can always survive on your own. You can make a decision. You can be like tactic on your own.
Yeah.
So that's the power of the network with the value that incentive everyone to make the decision on their own.
That's great. So switching gears a little bit, you've obviously invested in so many tokens and blockchain companies through your funds. Are you also a private investor in cryptocurrencies? Do you trade, or do you mostly invest through the funds?
Yeah, so I spend most of my time learning about the pain point of the tech. Let's say there's trilemma, like scalability, security, and and decentralization. So a lot of projects is trying to tackle the pinpoint, and or you can see like proof of work versus proof of stake, or like Bitcoin maximalist or proof of work maximalist. Like there's some physics theory underlying. I'm trying to explore more to be more grounded in the like technical insights and what is a fundamental thesis, what should be the right way to think about this market. So I spend more time, so I didn't really spend time trading. But seems like I should have, but I just don't really trade. So I do have like share in the token that as a company we invested, but then I don't have that much energy to take care of it actually.
Because you're more like a values based, is the underlying technology powerful? That's how you shape your investment thesis. And what advice would you have for someone who's never invested in cryptocurrencies before, doesn't know anything about blockchain, but are interested? How would you advise them to get started in this space?
So figure out your value proposition first, right? Like whether you wanna, have you done like stock market previously? Like me, I never engaged with the stock market previously, and right now I'm actually learning stock market on blockchain. It's actually a crazy learning curve. And then, so if you drive by that, you can look into those financial projects, and then of course, the intention for blockchain itself is like disrupt the banking system. But then right now a lot of financial instrument is actually coming back and they have worse design. They actually don't do well to the retail investors. So like figure out what you want. If you like value investment, you can look back to like basically figure out are you short-term or long-term at first, and then there's a lot of like academic researches and or like it's more about like are you talking about more what kind of, so not necessarily everyone out there in YouTube are good ones. And the whole world is the more you talk about things, the more people, the more voice you out there, and the more people gonna accumulate around you. So it's all about do your own research, and you have your own way of thinking, and in the end of the day, it's all about satisfaction on your own, right? So figure out what do you really want, and then you can, let's say there's some researches around like encryption in IC3, which is an organization in Cornell, or like figure out what's their underlying mission. And also enterprise is a very interesting play, is that if you're looking for adoption, if you want to invest in something that you can use daily, and you can looking for those enterprise companies or those reverse ICO, which is happening. And if you believe in the team, if you have seen them, how did they execute the previous company, and you can put some bet.
So understand yourself as an investor, do your due diligence, have a thesis, and then invest. Don't just follow the hype. You mentioned this word reverse ICO. Can you explain what that is?
Basically, so reverse ICO is a company who already have users, tractions, and they want to utilizing their existing customers into like with a token, with an incentive mechanism inside of their existing to make it either getting more tractions or concrete the network.
Okay, so this is a company that's already profitable that then does an ICO. Can you give an example of that?
So I really like Carry protocol, which is one of the projects in Korea, and it's reverse ICO incubated by Hashed, which is one of the largest Korean blockchain fund. So they actually work on a lot of reverse ICOs. They are working to bring blockchain into real world. And so at the end of the day, all the researches need to be done, right? Need to be used. And so Carry is working on it's basically rewarding system, but then they've actually working really hard for 4 years to get like 40K of O2O, it's like rewarding system for when you do shopping, and then you can do reward. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's not like any other companies that's in the space that they want to do reward, but they don't have any of the existing partners. And then so they actually got poached by some like institution looking for let's say exchanges who's looking for liquidation, and so those ones, a lot of company or a lot of VCs who's like investing a lot of infrastructure and then want to come back to what is the real value, right? So those company, as long as they're willing to make a bet or take a step into blockchain, that will be interesting play, and you can see how does the network, incentive network can help the real world organization. So
that's great, because then you start with the real world use case and then take advantage of the technology. That's really interesting. So final question, what's next in the future for JLAB? Is there anything exciting coming up, anything you want to talk about over the next 1 year?
Yeah, sure. Of course, we're still looking for a lot of infrastructure projects, and of course, there's a lot of core developers, either Bitcoin, Ether, that they know the pain points, and they probably can have better insights, or the researchers around the world that they still haven't made a move into commercialize their idea yet. So there's a lot of that company still there, and I'd love to know more about like what they were thinking of and how do they want to implement it. So that's like a researching side of thing. And then of course we have a lot of like traction from in China, which is a lot of internet in entrepreneurs that they're providing value to consumers, so that they got a lot of existing users. So we're happy to look into more of that. But also, so me personally, I'm always passionate about gaming. And previously, gaming company do not need blockchain because they're already printing cash. The successful ones, the cash cow, they do like franchise. They don't need to care. But then, so that's why I want to see more and more legitimate gaming company who's it's actually a pretty good use case. It's actually virtual currency. Its first use case is in like World of Warcraft, right? So, or before that, and I grew up with that. I played that when I was in primary school, third year. So, like elementary school. So. I'm definitely the user of virtual currency, and I actually bought that from Alibaba, the Taobao, while in RMB to bought the in-game currency. So it's kind of cheating, but so there's like use case. So basically, Alibaba back then is exchanges.
Yeah. So that's like a use case that seems like it's waiting to happen. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for your advice. This has been super valuable to the viewers as they start investing and learning about the space. And I think really if they can learn from you around this is how you do values-based investment instead of just without doing any research, I think that's going to be really beneficial for the user. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.